So, are you distracted? Do you know what you need to know? We're talking about the mind today. Let's begin. Welcome to Real Life and Archetypes. My name is Marina, and this is a place of rest from the overstimulation of our time. So, welcome home. Today, I'm talking about the mind. The mind that needs to be stimulated, the mind that is the source of great instability. So, what is the nature of the mind? So, the nature of the mind is fast and curious and open and wants to know and transmit very quickly what it learns. So, it's very fast. That's important to know that it's fast because what you perceive, you want to communicate immediately. That's what the mind it wants to do, really. So we need to understand that this is the nature, the raw nature of the mind. Now, the mind connects you to people. If you transmit, whether it's by voice or you write or any other kind of medium, it will connect you to people. Important. It needs circulation and stimulation. So the mind is not just about speaking, it's not just about thinking, it's also about socializing, okay? And, going places. It's all about places, people, and the things that we talk about. So it needs stimulation. And this is, when we're very young and we just want to go out and socialize with people, that kind of stimulation and excitement, the need for variety, and that's the mind. The mind needs that because the mind is going to learn how to navigate life. The mind is also responsible for how you perceive and create your reality. Important here. So the mind is one of those things that is at the origin of everything. It's also, it's very connected to the hero archetype in terms of being an original. It's an OG. It's an original gangster. It's one of the origin. I'm sorry for my voice. Speaking of voice and the mind, I have allergies and I speak too much. So your mind is responsible for how you perceive and create your reality. It is a source of instability and scattering, exactly, because it just wants to move and move. Okay, so we're thinking right now about the raw nature of the mind to understand what it wants to do. The mind can be used as a weapon that cuts like a sword. So you can see that there's a drawing right here in the background of two swords. And more on that in just a second. And the mind can be a trickster and a liar in so many ways. Let me just show you right now. What I want to show you is the concept of the swords. So I love to collect tarot decks. And there's one in particular that is very beautiful. It's called the Tarot of the Golden Wheel. I just love the art. It's just so beautiful. So this is one card from that tarot deck that I really like. It's very beautiful. So it has 9 swords. The whole, what is it called in English? Well, the whole thing of the swords, it's all swords, and it's all related to the mental element, everything that is mental and social. And it's all of the images are quite dire. They're quite negative. And there's a reason for that because, again, it can be used as a weapon that cuts like a sword. This is, we're so not in control of our minds. We're way less in control than we think. The mind is really very difficult, but it needs to be under some form of control. And here's the thing. Because the mind is just so volatile and just wants to go everywhere, it wants to know everything. It's curious and it's open. The function of it is for you to learn new things and to have that stimulation and to adapt to your reality. Okay, so you will perceive a lot of things that are changing, such as the news. More on that. But the thing is that If you go back to the archetype of the hero, where we want to figure out what it is that we love so that we give our own lives a direction of what we want to do. And it's going to be done through some form of activity and a form of being you that will serve a higher purpose and primarily your own life purpose. So it's not just about being active and being motivated. Something about that is going to help you become the person that you're supposed to become. So if you are in that state, then your mind will have a proper direction. And because it will have a direction, it will go and find out what you need to know. And especially when you follow your hero archetype, you will be in a state of having to overcome some challenges, okay? Because obstacles, because you're in a state of challenge, even if you're very motivated, of course you have, this concept of having the whole world against you. So this puts you in a state where your mind will be more directed. I don't like the word focus for the mind, but it's certainly, it does make sense, but it's more of a direction because the mind is always going to be moving. All right, so if you give it a direction and a link, that's also very important. It needs a direction and a link to that activity or purpose, that sense of purpose that you have activated, okay? Now you're giving the mind way more stability than when there is no higher purpose, or maybe you need to exercise your mind and stimulate your mind because of whatever you're doing, but your heart is not in it. That both of those situations, if you're not properly stimulating your mind, you can have a lot of issues. One of them is that you will not be truly interested, which can create a state of dropping from your environment. And that is really, really bad, because if you completely drop out of, not being interested at all, or just being tired because you've exercised your mind in things that, you have to do for your job, for example, something I did for many years, you're going to drop out of your environment because you're not actually stimulated in the proper way. And that has consequences in terms of not connecting with people, and particularly the right kind of people. And that has consequences in terms of your relationships and your potential relationships. And that in itself has consequences for the future, which is an archetype where you're going to need to feel more connected to a community. And this becomes more and more important as we get older, and that we have a sense of being connected to our society in some form, to a group of people in some form. If we don't have that, we feel dissociated, and this is very, very painful. Again, look at, the image of the swords. Let me just bring back this one here. The mind in pain is very, very disruptive, ultimately. The mind is also, it needs to be given the right direction, because it's also actually going to help you process your emotions. Okay, so this is something very interesting in terms of archetypes. Based on the Zodiac, of course, because when you have to deal with your own emotions, which is at different stages of life, it's like you're a child again. Your emotional world brings you back to a state of being a child, and you need to grow, okay? This is the function of the family archetype. And at different stages, we're going to feel things, even if we don't understand it that way. We are emotional beings, all of us. It's not just women, by the way. It's everyone. We feel things, and we're going to feel uncomfortable. We're going to feel that we belong or not, whatever it is. The function of the mind in how we process our emotions is very important because it will give the emotions a direction. So that's a fascinating concept that I really find very, very useful to understand. So to give the mind the right kind of stimulation, the right kind of information and data has consequences in everything. Okay, it's one of those basic archetypes. So think about for a moment, especially in our times, we're so stimulated, but in a way that is, very distracting. So we can lose our direction very easily, especially when the reality is that most of us are not connected to our hero archetype. We're just going through the motions. So what happens, especially if we watch the news, for example, and we spend a lot of time, going into a subject or something, and the mind seeks to know more, you don't even control that. And all of a sudden, your mind is creating a reality. And I wanted to show you this. This is from 1984, which that's a book by George Orwell, which is about a dystopia. And it says, reality exists in the human mind and nowhere else. This is very relevant to the mind because indeed, to have no control at all over the mind, it's going to create a reality whether you know it or not. So your perceptions are going to create something in your mind, which is your reality. So if you're always, in the news, stimulated, it's just that I see that a lot. I'm very connected on social media, and it happens to me as well. You're focusing on the news, for example, and especially when it's polarized and it's, taking you into the bubble, the reality, the bubble of one side against the other. It really creates a reality that has nothing to do, by the way, with your reality. It's just the reality that you're being served on a platter as narratives by the news. And sometimes when we don't have this hyper motivation of the hero's journey, which is really going to take the reins of the mind and give it a direction, and once that energy is fulfilled, then any other distraction is not going to be so harmful because your mind will know what it needs to know, okay? But when your mind doesn't know what it really needs to know, which is related to your life purpose, again, you may be very busy because of your job in terms of your mind, but meanwhile, your mind may not be receiving the fulfillment that it actually needs from the perspective of archetypes. This is something very, very crucial. It happened to me. So it has nothing to do, you may be working very hard at a very high level, but from a higher perspective, if your mind is not receiving what it really needs, in the end, you will not speak to the people that will interest you. You will not talk about the things you're interested in. You will not feed your mind with something that is enriching, and then you will not be connected to an environment with also potential relationships, and relationships are a symbol of a world that we want to join because it's going to increase the fulfillment of our individual potential. Relationships are important. And then it's also about the community that we're going to be more and more focused on in the future. So again, we go step by step. The mind needs a direction. And sometimes we think, we say sometimes, I wish I could read a good book instead of, all the garbage that I have to stimulate in my head. This feeling of wanting to do something that you're actually interested in, that's really, really about the mind. The mind needs the stimulation that it really needs. what else can I say about the mind? So I spoke of the emotional world. Yeah, so about the mind as a sword, let me just go back to this. So you can see how very quickly words can get out of hand. Okay, we can just go out of bound in our communications. It's not even, it doesn't even have to be conflictive, but I mean, we all know how very quickly we can misunderstand or say things in a way. So communications are very important in our lives in every way, but it's also about misperceptions. So if the mind is not exercised to be opened and be able to, adapt to a lot of situations and a lot of people and a lot of cultures, because it turns out that when we connect with people, we're actually connecting to micro cultures. So this whole thing is very healthy for us in order to be able to connect with the world. So if we don't nurture the mind and stimulate it and enrich it in the proper ways, this will increase our sense of disconnection from other people and increase our isolation, and also a sense of disruptiveness. There's going to be like a fragmentation of the mind, which is very pertinent to the archetype of the future self, the one that wants to be connected to the kind of people. We want to have a sense of community, of being connected to other people, like-minded people. So again, all of those things will be broken, or we will be connecting with the wrong kind of people. That can turn very bad. So the mind, it's so much bigger than we imagine. And let me just go back. It needs circulation. Yeah. Oh, and the concept of liar. Okay. So circulation. This archetype also relates to our circulation in terms even of transportation. This is very pertinent to, for example, accidents and things like that. So people who have some stuff in this archetype in this area, and I know what I speak of. By the way, this is a statement of a mind that is directed. I speak what I know. That's a mind that is aligned with a purpose. I have that in my own chart. So this is related to something in my own life about, issues with accidents and things like that. The ability to circulate and to connect with different people, a variety of people, and have a variety of experiences, places, and all of that stuff. This is how we actually learn to integrate into our environment, into the world. So imagine if there's anything there that prevents you at that stage from fulfilling that archetype. It can have huge consequences. So in my case, for example, I don't want to go out of respect. I don't want to go into details. But let's say that something happened and this affected, for me particularly, the speech and the communications. There was a death of the voice, of the ability to communicate, and also living in a place that was very isolated. It was not easy to go and circulate and connect with other people. So this is a subject that has always been very big in my own life. And this affects, again, your ability to the way that you're educated in early life, the way that you're stimulated. So if you don't have enough of that stimulation, it's going to be very difficult for you to connect with people. And if you can't connect with people properly, you're going to have conflict of the swords, conflict with others, inability to connect, to establish relationships, to build society and community in your own life and be integrated into the world. Massive consequences. So connecting with people, the ability to connect with people, the concept of being interested is very important as well in terms of the mind. To be actually interested. If you don't nourish your mind with stuff that you're actually interested in, yeah, that's going to be a problem, a very big one. So just to finish with this subject, the mind needs its stimulation. It needs what it needs to know in terms of there's a higher purpose for you, okay, that comes from the hero archetype. So if we are connected, we have linked our mind and its direction and its stimulation to what you really want to accomplish in life, the mind knows better, okay? It will have more direction and control to learn what it needs to know. So instead of, allowing the news or studying something that has zero relevance for you, you will go to the things that you need to know, all right? The substance of your mind will be enriched by the social and intellectual stimulation when searching for what you need to know. So if you need to know something, you're going to connect with people and ask people, or exercise your mind, look for something on the internet, in books, whatever. The ability to research and search is inseparable from actually connecting with people. It needs to be together. This is very important because for me, for example, I was raised in the French education system, which is very strict, and it's not a pleasant experience. And the way we were raised, I don't know if it's still like that over there. I don't live there anymore, but we were raised under very strict rules, and particularly we were absolutely forbidden from thinking for ourselves. So thinking was forbidden. You were not, this exercise of what do you think, never heard of in my entire upbringing in that education system. In fact, in the last 2 years of high school, I was able to get into an international school where I could receive some lessons in English, for example, and they were imparted by British teachers. As you can tell, I do not have the accent, but in the class, when the teacher was trying to have a conversation with the students, it was like being on Mars for those of us who were natives. It was so bizarre. And they were asked, students were asked, so what do you think? The question, what do you think? It was like, and our minds went blank. The only people who said absolutely nothing were the French natives, and everybody else who came from other countries, and they were, they would spend a year or two in France. They would all just, they've been in the British system forever, and they did encourage this participation in the class, something absolutely unheard of for the rest of us who came from, who were natives. And so this, what do you think? And I remember we had exams at the end, when you had to graduate, and we had oral exams. And they would ask you, for example, what do you think in terms of comparison about the Korean War compared with the Vietnam War? And, for those of us who were French natives, it's like you study and you're supposed to have the bullet points. But in the British system, you would study the Korean War, you would study the Vietnam War, but then that comparison, that's what you had to think for yourself. So it was very destabilizing, to say the least. But to be in a system, in that system, the teachers would constantly berate us and call us insulting names, that we were dumb, that we were tourists. I won't say other insulting words because YouTube will block me. But It's such a harsh system, and what it did to me is that, by the way, I love talking, as you can see. This is something that I love the most because I've never been able really to do what I loved and what I wanted. But most of all, because of that system, what I realized afterwards when I was exploring archetypes is that it really blocked the aspect of connection. Everything was about studying, having discipline, it was very harsh. And so I've always been capable to study and do difficult things. But the aspect of connecting was always missing, always. It's like this is something, it's like an emptiness inside that is never filled because, we were never able to really connect. In fact, we were discouraged from even thinking for ourselves. I mean, just think about that for a moment. It's crazy. So to not have, to not develop that capacity, that skill to think for yourself, it affects everything. And then, I mean, no wonder things are the way they are over there. But that's what they do. They just, you're not valued over there unless you are somebody with a lot of expertise. So young people are considered, absolutely worthless unless they're pursuing like super high level things. And then, okay, but people don't think for themselves. I mean, not during my time. So I speak what I know in terms of, that kind of stuff. So the mind is very important. And so I was getting there, and I'm remembering the point that I was going to make, that sometimes we have only one side of it. Either we will exercise the mind intellectually, but not socially, or we will do it socially, but not intellectually. So you can get to the other side of, just superficial stuff, and you're always stimulating the mind and gossiping and this and that. So you're filling your mind with garbage. And by the way, nothing wrong with that. Again, if you fulfill the purpose, by all means, entertainment, gossip, it's fine. The problem is that when we're not fulfilling the purpose, again, the mind eventually, especially as you get older, there is so much stuff in our head. And if we are not able to conceive our reality in the way that is going to, help us fulfill our life purpose, we can't just be on top of everything. So the mind needs some containment, needs direction. It's so important to take care of that. Okay, let me go back to this. Where was I? Yeah. To search for what you need to know. So you need to know what what you really need to know. The question is, what is it, right? Okay. So if we have that direction of a life purpose, that will be better. Your mind will help you process your emotions with more direction. Again, at several stages of life, you're going to need to process your emotions. Imagine if your mind is not in the right place, if your mind is not perceiving reality in the right way. If you're watching the news and they're just scaring you because that's the marketing nowadays, and suddenly your reality is like so scary when actually your reality isn't, but it's your TV that's telling you that it is. So that happens a lot. I mean, when you just want anybody, we watch the news for 5 minutes and it's like the world is going to end. And I get caught up in it just like anybody else, even being aware of what is happening. It's just crazy. The mind is incredible. Again, as your personal PR, the mind is your PR. It will connect more. So this is when your mind knows better. It's aligned with the direction. As your personal PR, your mind will connect more with the right kind of people, which is crucial for the future self and also the self who needs to be in relationships. Instead of, this is a good one, being effectively a liar. So this concept of the lie, it's not just the concept of intentionally lying. It's actually that you're not the person that you're supposed to be. And so in the end, this is something that I know intrinsically because it's just so part of me. I have that archetype so much. I have a lot of all the archetypes. Unfortunately, they're spread all over. It's just that it, it is so true that you feel like a liar because you're not talking about the stuff that actually is interesting to you. And you're just stimulating your mind out of social pressure or conventions, whatever it is that you're supposed to do. There's something that happens when you don't go in the direction that you really want to go. And it's not the concept of self-indulgence. It's something so much bigger than that. So you can be effectively a liar. But the mind, again, is, by the way, there in the archetype of the mind, you have the trickster, right? The trickster, the con person. This is because of those who use the dark arts of manipulation through the mind, or the trickster can have, different aspects, positive, negative, but it just, the mind is so fragile. We need to be very careful about the mind. So the instability that I spoke of before, it's going to create an unstable mind for you if you don't give it a direction. Scattering it can be, for example, for me, the scattering was that professionally I was doing a lot of things, right? What is it called in English? Yeah, jack of all trades. Right, so I had to do like a lot of things and use my mind. So the versatility was about my professional functions, but this concept of being scattered, I felt it every day because I had to be at a super high level and I had to control so many things. I was a programmer and designer, and I had my own company with partners, so I had to do a lot of things. It was so stressful. And to me, I did feel that scattering. It's like the direction was not mine. I wasn't interested. And I really felt it because I have that archetype so much. So I really understand this concept so much. Distracted, you can be distracted. Again, you can be in concrete ways distracted, as in watching the news, gossiping, and this and that. But you can be effectively distracted from your life purpose because, again, you're in the wrong path. It's not yours. You didn't originate the situation you're in, not at the original point. And so your mind is not, it's distracted effectively. Superficial, again, if you're not going where you need to go, you're just going to go from one thing to another, right? Uninterested and uninteresting, again, that relates to connecting, not connecting to your reality. Ooh, you are what you think. Your mind creates your reality. That I'm just going to leave it right there because I think that's what we need to remember. You are what you think, and your mind creates your reality. So I'm just going to leave it here because I've been talking for a while. And I hope you liked this video. And please like and subscribe to support this channel. And I hope to see you very soon.